Now, having gotten some food for thought on the complex relationship between security, liberty, and democracy, we're now going to zero in on security. It's time for the Warsaw Security Forum's National Security Advisors Talk. The topic of this talk, from Finland's north to the Black Sea's depth, facing the new Iron Curtain. This session is organized in partnership with the National Security Bureau of Poland, and your moderator is the one and only Katarzyna Pisarska, chair of the Warsaw Security Forum and co-founder of the Casimir Pulaski Foundation.
Welcome, everybody. Good morning. Actually, good afternoon already on the second day. How is the energy in the room? Yay! Yeah, I knew it. Our community is always strong, and we have had already so many great discussions starting from the morning. And I am so privileged to be able to moderate this panel today, a panel of national security advisors from our different friends, neighbors, but also our own. Let me very quickly introduce to you our fantastic panel. Xavier Chatel, which is the advisor for strategic affairs to the President of the Republic of France. Xavier, great to have you here. France today is coming in big numbers. I know you yesterday had a session of parliament, and today we have both you and Ben Haddad, and we have a surprise for everybody in the last panel, but I'm not going to say anything. So, Xavier, you don't know anything. Great to have you here, Xavier. Next, of course, the representative of our partner country, Sweden, Henrik Landerholm, who is the National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister of Sweden. Henrik, great to have you back here at the Warsaw Security Forum. Next, the person you know all too well, who has been with us the whole 2 days, but most importantly has been for years our strategic partner, national security advisor to the Polish president, but most importantly, the head of the Bureau of Security of Poland, Minister Jacek Siewiera. And last but not least, our closest neighbor friend, Tomáš Pojar, the National Security Advisor in the Prime Minister's Office of Czechia, the Czech Republic. Fantastic to have you with us. So the topic of today's discussion is from Finland's north to the Black Sea depth. Are we facing a new Iron Curtain? And let me start with just that. We're going to have a panel speaking mainly on Russia, but I wanted to really get your insight. Do you believe that with everything that has happened in our relationships with Russia, everything we have seen, not only since of course, the full-scale invasion, but from the annexation of Crimea, the type of activities that Russia for many years has been instigating on our societies, do you feel we're facing a new Iron Curtain? Xavier, can I start with you?
Thank you, Katarzyna. And thanks to you and to the organizers for having me here. Just a few remarks. I would say first, since the fall of the Iron Curtain, so more than 30 years ago, the parameters have changed. So Russia is no longer what it used to be in many ways, in an economic sense, in a strategic sense. China rising enormously. And for that self-same reason, also the degree of US interest for European security has changed. So I think we should not project the same parameters as in that time. And at the same time, the equation for the Europeans, I think, is the same. In the foreseeable future, we will have to make ourselves respected by Russia. And that means a number of things. That means, first, that we will have to remain united. No small feat if we consider that there's a range of positions on Russia across the Europeans, and often predicated by geography and the degree of how far they are from Russia, and also from the historical experience. Second, we need Russia not to prevail in Ukraine. It's the last and the foremost episode in a 15 multi-year geopolitical war waged against Europe by Russia to try to change the rules of the game, and that's precisely what we should not accept. Third, we need to arm ourselves and give ourselves the ability to face that new situation, and this in a European, in a NATO, and sometimes in a flexible format way. I'm speaking here, we're just about to have between Poland and France probably a cooperation treaty. We're increasing our cooperation with this amazing and very important partner of ours, but my other friends on the panel are similarly countries with which we try to increase in a bilateral or multi-bilateral way our security strength and robustness, and that's what we will need to do for the foreseeable future.
Thank you very much, Henrik. If I can move to you. During the Cold War, Sweden, if I remember correctly, was a neutral country. And since last year, well, you're no longer neutral. You decided to join NATO. And it is a consequence of Russia's aggression war in Ukraine. How do you see the security environment right now versus what we talked about during the Cold War?
Well, my evaluation is very close to the one of Xavier's. But first of all, I would like to extend my great thanks to those of you who have arranged this fantastic event, of which Sweden is the partner country. We were very happy with the invitation at last year's Warsaw Security Forum, and I think we have created some confidence in that we are committed partners. I attended a breakfast this morning, about 50 people present. About 50% of them were Swedes, and I think we are over 100 here today.
I heard the whole Stockholm moved here, and somebody asked me, but who's defending and ruling Stockholm in the meantime?
Oh, most of the soldiers are actually, and the sailors are actually left.
It was a joke.
Yeah, the difference is huge. I mean, I started my career in national security 41 years ago, at the height of the Cold War. We didn't know that the Soviet Union at the time was on the demise, so to speak. We relatively soon understand it. Of course, the basic strategic situation is very different because the US is mainly focused on another, now significantly stronger adversary in the Far East, while we have to deal with Russia, happily enough with strong support from our American friends, but increasingly, I would argue, the demands on our defense budgets, on our cohesion, on an increasing ability to handle all the different aspects of the weaponization of everything that characterizes Russian activity. That was not the case during the last Cold War. The difference is also, and that must be mentioned, that was a Cold War in our region. Currently, we have a hot war in Ukraine. Russia refuses to call it a war, but that is what it is. And the Ukrainians are, to a large extent, fighting our fight. My recipe's very close to Xavier's. I would also like to mention that I do not see any viable path for Ukrainian security other than a NATO membership guaranteed by us all, the rest 32 of us. We have to be very clear in our policies towards Russia. I hope, and hope should never leave mankind, that Russia during my lifetime will adapt, adjust, and become a partner once again. But I see it very far away from where we are now. That means that we need, and that means specifically those of us who are close to Russia and will always be the interpreters for countries not that close, who do not immediately see the threat in survival terms, to keep to teach, so to speak, and make all 32 allies understand that the Russian threat, the Russian challenge is here to stay, and we have to handle it.
Thank you very much, Henrik. Moving on to Minister Siewiera and also National Security Advisor, Mr. Pojar. I wanted to build on something that Henrik actually said a moment ago, so about the future of our relations in Russia. You've both been very unspoken about what Russia is today and how we should be dealing with Russia today. But is there, how do we foresee, our relations with Russia 10 years from now? Is it possible to change the never-ending paradigm of colonial, imperial thinking of this country? Minister Siewiera.
Thank you very much. So probably I can only agree with Xavier and Henrik and expand on that, but I will try to do that in more Central European, with more Central European flavor in it, especially when it comes to assessment of the future. When we refer to Iron Curtain, we refer to the period of time which we can call strategic. And we also have to perceive Russia right now in a strategic dimension. So what exactly Russia is doing in Ukraine and what it imposes on our future here in Central Europe and Europe as a whole. And what we have to always have in mind is that Russia is totally based on fossil fuels, we know that, on the export of the fossil fuels. Europe is the main customer, and Europe is resigning of it, just as China is doing the same. When you count in also the human resources, and particularly quality of the human resources in Russia, Russia nowadays is not well positioned for a success in a world which we lived with a success and profits and security for the last 30 years. In upcoming decades, Russia is not well positioned for that. And Russia is trying to change the global order, change the global security architecture by only thing which now they have. What's left for them? Of course, the violence. Violence in conventional armed forces, what we see in Ukraine, and hybrid potential for hybrid confrontation with West. So when it comes to assessment of do we have the Iron Curtain, I call it a hybrid curtain. And it's demarcating without our political will, without our political big statements. It's demarcating from Finland through Baltic states, and Finland closed borders, Baltic states and their bunkers, our barrier on our eastern border, to the south, to the Black Sea. It's a hybrid curtain because we need to prevent also hybrid activities like the migration, militarized migration, diversion, sabotage, and the others. But the main thing, when we're trying to anticipate what will be the future of Russia, is to realize why it's important to make Ukraine win this war. If Ukraine is winning, Russia has to lose. Let's do the intellectual experiment right now. Every one of us met Russians, particularly during our holidays. Yeah? Everyone? Is there anyone who haven't? I don't think so. All right. So let's start. Somewhere in Italy, in pizzeria. Do you really like to sit together with Russians, with their culture, with their behavior, with people who believe that Russia was fighting against West, not Ukraine? Russia and their people are convinced, deeply believe that they are fighting with West. Do you really want to sit at this pizzeria with the people who believe that they won the war with West? They are ordering another order, calling for a waiter who is Italian, looking at neighbors with lack of respect, and they purely believe that they won with the West. Do you really want that future for Europe? If we want to prevent that, if we want to prevent their belief that they won, if we want to make sure that they won't choose another goals because they realized another one, the previous in Ukraine, we have to make sure that Ukraine wins. And maybe there will be the future for Russia, democratic, stable, and committed to global security as permanent member of the Security Council in the United Nations should be?
Thank you very much, Mr. Siewiera. Mr. Pojar, please.
I do not expect anything good from Russia, never. I am fine with Iron Curtain, and if it needs to be not only fences, but also mined, I'm fine with that, as far as I'm on the right side. And as far as we Czechs have in between Russia and us, Poland and Ukraine. So thank you very much. And let's make this Iron Curtain really helping, really working, and let's have it for another 50 years.
Thank you. That is a very honest and straightforward response. But Xavier, do the French agree? Are we ready for a future of Europe without Russia? Because we speak with many of our French counterparts, and their vision is that at some point we will go back to seeing Russia as part of the European security architecture, which I think is a vision that, as you see, a lot of us in the region don't really believe. And after you answer, I'll make sure to open it to the audience. I see Edward Lucas is already there in the first row, but if you have questions, I will allow you absolutely to ask them in just a moment. Xavier, sorry to put you in the spotlight here for a moment.
Very briefly. So, we don't have pizza PTSD, but but yet. So I don't think we're in the business of essentializing, because it's about relationships between countries. So it's about balance of force and how you build, based on sometimes mistrust and military balance or imbalance, a livable continent with the fact that you can't change, which is geography. That's the first point. Second point, so back to what I was suggesting before, we should arm. We should, build our resilience. We should build our democratic resilience against hybrid attacks. Not easy. We should remain united. I think we should also think about our strategic depth, because an Iron Curtain is useful when you close the shop. When we close the shop in Europe and we look to the back of the shop, we have the ocean. When Russia closes the shop, it looks to the factory, China. So we have to think about what is our strategic depth when we look in the broader future. And so eventually, I think that what we have to do is to build the strength of our continent, whoever is in the White House, hopefully with US involvement, but we don't know. And to make sure that based on this and from a position of strength, we can build after time relationships of cohabitation on the continent with Russia, and I don't see another way of going about it.
Okay, so some cohabitation is the future, but we'll go back.
Don't get me into French politics.
Okay, thank you. So let's open the floor to questions. I see if we can get a mic in the first row to Edward Lucas. Yeah, is the mic coming? And then I see another question there. Oh, yeah. And another. So I see 3 questions at this point.
Do you want me to just a shot?
No, definitely not.
Yeah. I think, obviously, the unity of perception since the war in Ukraine is very welcome, but there's a huge gap if you go back 10, 20, 30 years, where people in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, the Czech Republic were already very worried about Russia back in the 1990s. And the big Western countries told them that they had PTSD and that it was important to treat Russia as a partner. And the pull in the big Western countries is to get back to normalization. We've almost heard this from Xavier. This is an unfortunate episode with Russia, but the war will finish eventually, and we have to live with Russia. We all live on the same continent. We have to get back to business as usual in the end. And I don't see how that's resolved. There's never going to be business as usual while Russia remains an empire for the countries living next to it. For the countries who don't live next to it, Russia as an empire is ultimately a good business proposition. Comments, please.
Thank you very much. Will, if you can pass to the back, the microphone. Please come forward. Oh, sorry, the microphone's there. Thanks. And then we'll ask the lady here, so on the other side of the mic. Yes, please. And do introduce yourself, please.
Yes. Bartłomiej Michałowski, Sobieski Institute. 20 years ago, among 30 top technology companies, we had 4 companies from Europe. And the second largest technology company was a European one. 20 years later, I mean today, on top 30 technology companies, we have 1 European company, number 15, I think, today. All big companies, technology companies, are from US or China. If we want to be strong, we should have strong companies, strong production facilities. What should we change that within next 20 years, we will have more technology and know-how on top among those top technology companies?
Thank you for this question. I think this is also very important from a security point. We'll come back. And the last question here, of course, if you can, from the other side, the mic is coming, please. Yes.
Okay. Does it work now?
Try again. It should be working now.
Is it working now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we had this technological question.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, I'm so sorry, miss. My name is Karolina Besnic. I'm an analyst with the Collegium Wojtylianum in Krakow. I wanted to know, we talked about technology. This was the previous question. From the other side, looking at European values, we have Russia with its own value structure. We have China with its own value structure, the United States with its own value structure. How do we protect what makes Europeans Europeans in the face of all of this? Because if we want to continue building our European family, our European home, we have to protect these values which are at the core. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Tomáš, if we can start from you. Edward wanted comments asking, he said there will be no business as usual if the Russian mindset doesn't change dramatically. How do we change the mindset? I mean, we've tried. We've put so much effort for at least 2 decades now, free since 1991, to include Russia into the transatlantic community, the Western institutions, into the Council of Europe, into even, we have a special still existing Council of Russia, NATO, and so on and so forth, and yet we did not succeed. Is it possible to change Russia?
No, it's not. Really, seriously, it's not possible. Of course, there will be forces who will be arguing for hugging Russia again, and we have to struggle with that, but at the end, it's not possible to change Russia as long as Russia is an empire. Once it implodes as an empire, I don't know when it's going to be, but then it's going to be a different Russia. Maybe there is going to be more Russias. I don't know, but it's up to Russians to decide. On the how to get competitive again, well, let's deregulate and let's think about the Green Deal and how we can change Green Deal that it doesn't harm us and that we are competitive. But the Green Deal is still a holy cow word in Europe, so it's not going to be changed. But we need to change it if we want to be competitive in the world. So realistically and rationally change it, not completely reversing it. And how to keep our European values? Well, let's scrap the idea of multiculturalism and let's be proud that we are Europeans and that we are European nations again. It's easier said than done, but I don't think there is a better recipe.
Well, thank you, Tomáš. A lot in there to speak about. Minister Siewiera, is it as simple?
Yes. I think that it's always simple when we only limit us to the assessment. Execution, like you said, Tomáš, is much more complicated. Even if we have to agree to some, these are things which reaches the core of our identity, European identity, French, Polish identity. Xavier mentioned that they don't have pizza PTSD. I have to refer to etymology. Do you know from which word roots of bistro are taken? Someone was yelling on your waitress, bistro, bistro. Huh? I'm not sure if you don't have this PTSD. this talk about what European identity is, what values are supporting it, and what Russia is, how their identity will evolve, is highly related with the culture and the values which we have. We have to improve the European values, understanding of democracy, of course. We have to bring and protect those values in Ukraine. But also, if we want to change the minds of Russians, I absolutely agree that the only way to change the way how the bully is using, how he is thinking, is to make sure that he won't benefit from use of violence. And this is what we are fighting for. When it comes to the answer on not values, but very tangible thing, like business and corporate management, I think that we, in Poland, we have in recent days very vibrant debate about it, how we should improve and protect our R&D and innovative system. So we, as a civilization, witnessed 4 industrial revolutions. At every point, there were some resources which were crucial. Fossil fuels, Poland don't have it, so we're not benefiting. Cuprum and electricity, we were late. We not benefited. We were under Russian boots, honestly. What will be the key resource in the 5th industrial revolution? Intellect. Intellect, which is the continuation of evolution. Intellect created by this natural evolution now is implemented in the artificial intelligence. We have to be aware that this intellect of, in Poland, 38 million people, in France, in Sweden, is the key resource which we have to protect, invest in, also the capital, tangible asset, to make sure that we have the advantage in competition with China or America. And having said that, one only remark, we have to remember that it's not only about the person who we can dismiss, fire from work. It's about the team which this person created. Decades of education which this person took on their shoulders, determination, sometimes anger. IT guys don't communicate with themselves, honestly, very smoothly. If someone can create a team consists and surviving 5 or 7 years working on one project in artificial intelligence, for sure this is something what we have to protect. And this is only resource which I see as a crucial in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Henrik, what are your thoughts from a bit northern perspective?
Well, many thoughts in this regards. I try to be short. First of all, I don't believe in absolutism regarding the development of countries. Swedes are strong Russophobes. That has increased over the last 30 years. But
Finally, it's a badge of honor.
But, yeah, no, I would say we do not wear it as a badge of honor because we believe things can change. We believed strongly and tried to support Russia during the 90s. I met Yeltsin in 97. He came to Sweden and wanted to sell gas. We were not interested, but we were interested, honestly, in good cooperation with Russia. We don't hate Russia. We hate the Russian regime. I don't hate the Russian people. I believe Russia can change. They must commit, and the change must come from the inside. And the prerequisite, as Jacek said, it is that they actually meet strength, and they meet clear borders, and they hopefully meet a loss in Ukraine. But Russia is not a lost cause. It's a difficult course. I don't foresee any change during my lifetime, but we cannot give up the idea that Russians deserve to live in democracy and under the same values as we do. And that is, I'm convinced that this is possible. Secondly, competitiveness. It is so important that it's actually fundamental. It's not just on the top of the icing of the cake. It is the cake. And it's the reason why Europe is trailing. And it's the main reason, and it's the main component that we need to change to be not only competitive, but to be able to secure our countries and our continent. And we are slackers. Even Sweden, who is an open, liberal market economy, compared to the US. The US and Sweden had the same GDP per capita in 2009. Now they are 26% behind us. Well, their GDP per capita is now 26% higher 15 years later. And we have not been doing badly in a European perspective. But we are too much into regulation. We are too afraid of free markets. We are too afraid to see the opportunities that are given there. We must find another balance between our decent welfare states and what they provide, and the necessary opening of our economies to be able to defend our way of life and our security. The third question was very important, but I forgot it.
Okay, Xavier, you want to contribute, answer to any questions, because I will have a last round, very short, to all of you, but please.
Yeah, very quickly, and to set the record straight. So first, I couldn't agree more with what Henrik just said. And when I spoke about pizzeria PTSD, I meant with this, we don't have an issue with the Russians. We don't have an issue with the Russian population. We don't essentialize the problem, and we don't feel that there's something inherent about the people. It's about state relations. And many countries have PTSD with Russia as a state, and we fully respect that. And not only do we fully respect it, but that was at the heart of the big speech that President Macron gave at Bratislava, which I think set a very strong view from the French side on this. So there again, we're not saying there should be normalization. We are saying there should be relationships based on respect, and for the foreseeable future on deterrence with Russia in many senses, and we don't have an issue with the population. We're not essentializing. And when it comes to the economy, I agree there again with Henrik. What we need, I think, is the European capital market reform, because we have top-of-class engineers, we have fantastic startups. It's scale which is lacking. And to go to scale, what we need is a unified market, and capital market is at the heart of it. And so that's what we're working on at the moment.
Yeah, thank you very much. And as we have really 3 more minutes left, a short question, and I ask you for a very short answer. If there would be one thing that you would be able, being all-powerful, to do to stop Russia, what would it be? If there's one thing that we could do and put all our efforts and forces into, what would that be? Also to change Russia of the future. Tomáš.
Well, if you said what would it be to do it now globally, I would wish to bomb Iranian nuclear sites tonight. But if it's regarding Russia, I have no clue. I think that we have to continue supporting Ukrainians so that the Ukrainians are able to defend themselves, and we should support them more. And we need them to stop this barbaric country swallowing up Ukraine and then having appetite for others. I don't think that there is a silver bullet and miraculous solution, and I don't have it, because I don't think also the change of leadership in Moscow would not bring a fundamental change of Russia as an empire, and as every empire of this type must expand. Because once it stops its willingness and its will to expand, then it stops to be empire and it implodes. So, and such empires have to be stopped only by force. And if they see the force, then they understand that they can still push, but that they will not go beyond the border. So we simply must be strong, and Ukrainians must be strong. And I hope that they will be able to defend themselves. And I hope that there will be still free and democratic and Western type Ukraine, and as Czech, I hope that Russia is going to be as far from us as it is, and if it's further, also fine.
Thank you. Jacek? 1 minute.
So for sure, it's make sure that Ukraine wins this war and Russia loses. That's something what will change the mindset of Russians, and it will be beneficial for the people. After this exchange of talk, I'm quite sure that we're talking about the same thing. Let's take a look what's happening with Russian people in Ukraine. They are dying in the name of regime and some violent fantasies of being imperium. They are dying in a way in which no one wants to die. Sometimes I like to turn on Russia Today to listen how casual Russian citizen is thinking on. And recently, 1 week ago, I heard from one of the think tankers that now we have to rebuild the buffer zone in Ukraine and Belarus, but it's not enough. Better was the buffer zone in Poland, but it was not enough for Soviet Union because Soviet Union collapsed. The best buffer zone is in the Atlantic, and Russian forces should be deployed in Lisbon and Madrid. If this is the way, how they think, the only antidotum could be loss in Ukraine.
Thank you very much, and thank you for pointing this. I think that those who do not follow Russian TV do not realize how much time is spent on these kind of illusions and, bombing Poland with nuclear weapons and, of course, occupying the Baltic states and going further to Berlin and so on. Henrik, please, in very short 2 sentences, what can we do?
Short term, do everything to keep NATO cohesion, continue to support Ukraine, grant them NATO and EU membership. Short term and long term, constrain Russia to the largest extent. They have weaponized everything. We must look into everything we do in all our relations towards them, deep down into the toolbox, and then apply the necessary tools to push back as long as they behave as they do.
Thank you. And Xavier, the last word is yours. What do you advise not only to us, but also to President Macron on this matter?
Second part is classified.
I tried.
The first part, I mean, we don't do the re-engineering of other countries, big countries, or we wouldn't do re-engineering even by force of magic of, China or US or whichever country. But what I can say is pretty simple, and back to what we were saying at the beginning, support Ukraine, strengthen EU.
Thank you so much. Let's give a great round of applause to our panel. And let me just say that we also invite you today to hear voices of Russian opposition. We will have Mikhail Khodorkovsky on this stage. We will also have Garry Kasparov, and we will ask them exactly the questions, what to do with Russia today. Thank you so much, and the program, of course, continues.